This is the daily writing recorded, day 57, titled Alternate Amber. In the spring of last summer, irrevocable tears were shed. Sat upon an old cushion in the home of an established person, I began to be unimportant. History had come and informed me of its previously made adjustments, that I, as a character of life, was simply too irrelevant for even its footnotes. A rather harsh decision, really. One I quite would have liked to object to, if for no other reason than to have my revolt be recorded instead, and as such, in some small measure, retain my humanity. The cause of my irrelevance is quite another story, one that I am not eager to share. It involves a party of 5, spread out across the summer of last year, good spirits attached to souls I once held dear to my own. I do not blame them for my perilous imposition. Their parts were cut out long ago into the fabric of Providence. I do not rage, my blood does not boil. Rather, I simmer in the dignity of quiet reservations. There was not much left for me to do. I was to lift myself up and carry my wounded soul across the thick carpeted floor and past the wooden door frames that never welcomed me, but which would be courteous enough to whisper I was not to return through its history-soaked creaks and final metallic throng as the door latch met the strike plate. The first of the spirited souls went by the name of Mr. Charles F. Scott, a delightful man on most occasions, whom, however, upon the sight of chair within dollars, could be quite unusually pessimistic about the whole affair. He called delusional attachment to the temporal nature of love. Despite his disposition, Charles Scott loved a great deal. It was how we were acquainted. In a flight of what perhaps was supposed to be something or other than fate, Mr. Scott deemed it necessary to fill my life with his presence. It all transpired in university. I will spare you most of the details, but do know that it involved a chance encounter on a patch of grass whereby a cricket ball, landing within my lap, caused quite a discussion amongst its players. Charles was the worst of them. He argued passionately for something or another. I've yet to learn the proper terminology, during which he demanded and practically kidnapped me into his position. I went along willingly, paralyzed to do anything other than to go along with his insanity. It was he who inevitably introduced me to Elizabeth, the second character of my demise. An unremarkable breath of air, infested to the unsuspected lungs of many a man and woman. It was her simplicity that drew in the curious. It was her infallibility that drowned them in her love. I was one of those souls, plagued by her normality, and one of the very few who experienced just how unusually unaccustomed one can get to being embraced by her, and how sorely its touch can be missed once it's gone. My love for her could not be elaborated, and was upon all accounts a stretch too extravagant for her. If only I had been passionately normal, then perhaps my ill-fated encounter would not have met such a deplorable ending. It was within the second week of having met Mr. Charles Scott that Elizabeth made her introductions to me, storming into the university library to berate Charles for committing the unforgivable sin of not informing her that he was unable to attend her party of the Tuesday before. He and I, through merely standing beside him, were not to be invited ever again, and were warned to not try and attempt to get together the following day, for she had forbidden her other guests from interacting with us on penalty of social death. As fast as she arrived, equally as rapid did she deliver her sermon, and succinctly did she depart, unknowingly carrying my heart with her. It was at that party of hers that I met the third minister of my demise, a man by the name of Mr. Henry Allen, a reprehensible sort of man that everyone seemed to tolerate, for at the very least, they argued, he was funny. He and Emma, as he called Elizabeth, and I from that point onward did too, were acquainted through a mutual friend he supposedly was secretively dating, The secret being that she was not aware of it, and that he never bothered to engage with anyone else for the sake of what he called civility. The other persons in his life were not to be considered along the same lines as his secretive love, whose name he could never remember. His identity was equally undefined, as he refused to be anything other than what he was within that moment, a position that accrued the anger and disappointment of many. One of those persons was a distasteful woman by the name of Clara Bennet, a vivid and imaginative person who circled around Henry in an eternal attempt to refute his dismissal of her interests in him. She was often quite ill and spent most of her free hours within the confines of her artistic temperaments, forever searching for ways to bridge her internal entrapments with external actions. This, on occasion, led to quite strange acts of emotions that were never quite understood by its intended recipients. When, one fated party, she presented Emma with one of her self-portraits, none understood why she had had to depict herself in the nude. Even less understood was when she, without reservations, gave it a prominent place within Emma's living quarters and asked everyone what they thought about it all. I was one of the very last persons to be asked at that particular party, which put me in quite disadvantaged position of having nothing clever, interesting, or new to say, and told her as much. I promised her I would mull the matter over, and further assured her that I would visit her apartments to get a better look at some of her other self-portraits, that perhaps better encapsulated her supposed free-spirited nature. It, she hoped, would grant me the opportunity to formulate an opinion after all, for to have no opinion was unnatural. I never quite managed to give my opinion on her state of being, which I believe allowed for us to be the very best of friends. It was within her apartment that I met the final character of this sordid affair. A lover of plants and flowers, Miss Alison Gray was most distant in her affections of all other living beings. She merely tolerated the presence of Clara and had to learn, so she claimed, how to survive my existence so near hers. Unreserved in her opinions, Alison made no effort to hide her distaste for social gatherings and the cruelty of conversation. She and Emma made for unusual friends, whereby it was told by others that their amicability was more the product of societal convenience rather than any particular commonality. I, on the other hand, always felt it was their love of the conveniality that brought them together in the quiet periods of life. Emma did not converse unnecessarily, and Alison did not listen surreptitiously. It was within this half space of life that I never quite managed to settle in, an odious fact that haunted me throughout my friendship with the five of them that forlorn spring. I was a passing ship in their river of civility, never meant to be more than a curiosity, never meant to be more than a passing fade. The blood of life to be sacrificed to continued dismissiveness of all things in existence. Fallen from their grace, I can attest to the seductiveness of relevance. It is a rare gift to have experienced a yearning for all things temporal, for swift unburdened living, for passing love, and witty suffering. I experienced it all and lost it just as fast. It was not the loss which bothered me the most. Rather, it was the knowledge of the havoc time will enact upon my memories, upon the sensations, upon the adventurous spirit and deep desires that I accrued in my brief time with them. It is that which I will mourn the most, as will I my unrequited loss of a woman whose sole existence revolved around not existing around me. I have tasted of their fruits, and I have tasted of their grace, and I have shed tears towards my loss of innocence. For I loved them so, those that I, in time, will not know, those who one unremarkable spring made me know there was more to life than I could ever know. No more has been written or recorded. Thank you for listening, and good night.